At first glance, this looks like a ride-along with a police officer.
K-9 handler Troy Morgan, Denver Metro Protective Services.
But for 12 minutes on YouTube, a security guard company promotes an employee in Denver who was actually fired twice as a cop.
I love being here at Denver Metro.
Troy Morgan is now an armed security guard with Denver Metro Protective Services. The city issued him a license in early 2020.
Was he your most problematic officer?
Yeah, I would probably say so.
A couple years before his security job, Morgan worked for this guy.
Your termination letter is 6 pages long. Have you ever written one that long before?
I have not.
Jacob Friedenberger used to be the police chief in Fowler, Colorado, east of Pueblo. He fired Morgan less than a year after he hired him.
Difficulty training, difficulty adhering to policies. Never really seemed to get along with other officers or members of the community.
His termination letter cited inappropriate behavior with a waitress at a restaurant. It also said Morgan had problems with issuing citations, keeping a prisoner secured, and following pursuit policies. Over the phone, Morgan told us nearly all of those allegations aren't true. He said the firing was in retaliation because it happened a few days after Morgan filed complaints against Friedenberger.
The behaviors that he's exhibited before, I think those are very concerning. I personally would have some major concerns with that. It definitely wouldn't be my choice.
After Friedenberger let him go, the Springfield Police Department picked him up, and Morgan didn't keep that job long either. The department got a complaint that Morgan threatened to assault a man on a call and got into a verbal altercation. This week, Morgan told us he lost his cool and admitted to making a mistake. There was an internal affairs investigation, and records show the police chief fired him for intimidating or threatening behavior and his relationship with the public.
Making a difference with your community.
A couple months later, Morgan was issued a security guard license in Denver.
Go the extra mile there when I can.
So how comfortable do you feel that he's a security guard here?
Well, it's the scrutiny that he's under in Denver is more than any scrutiny he's going to see anywhere else in Colorado, and he passed that scrutiny.
Eric Escudero works for Denver's Department of Excise and Licenses. The city is one of very few in the state that requires any type of security guard license. They even implemented new requirements in 2018, including additional training and a tougher criminal background check, which Morgan passed.
When it comes to past employment history, that's really the responsibility of the company to make sure that they're hiring people that's not going to put their license at risk.
Springfield told us they have no documentation that any security company contacted the town or police department. Morgan says his employment history was on his resume for the security job.
Would you have hired this person?
I probably would not have hired this person.
Dan Corsentino was in law enforcement for 25 years. He now runs his own security guard company in Pueblo.
And even though he is guided by policy and procedure, the past behavior suggests he doesn't follow it. And security companies are hurting for employees. So it's an individual choice of each security company.
Corsentino says former police officers are valuable to security guard companies because they have additional training. They're not the same job, though.
A police officer has police powers to arrest. A security operator, a security guard, has only citizen arrest powers to detain.
Number U19-03, Troy Morgan, certification.
A year after the city issued Morgan a security guard license, the Colorado Peace Officer Standards and Training Board voted to revoke his police officer certification.
All in favor?
Aye.
Springfield police accused him of lying, which he denies. Now he can't work in law enforcement anywhere in Colorado.
But should decertified cops be allowed to be security guards here in Denver?
If they have no past criminal history, then yes, they could be allowed to do that in Denver. If they have not committed any violations, that would become a criminal problem. And the majority of our security guards in Denver are of the highest character, and we see not a great deal of violations of breaking security guard laws in the city and county of Denver.
Escudero says there is no record of any violation against Morgan's security license. Previous concerns, though, make Morgan's former boss worried about his latest job.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure it's possible that maybe he will find his niche and get along just fine. But definitely they need to be monitoring people like that, people that have had issues in the past.
This has probably been the best company that I've worked for.
Morgan says he didn't tell his security guard company he's no longer allowed to be an officer in Colorado because it hasn't come up. Officers can have a hearing to keep it if accused of untruthfulness, but Morgan says he decided not to because his name had been dragged through the mud and he was over being a cop. I have reached out to Denver Metro Protective Services several times over the last 2 weeks to find out how much they knew about his employment history before they hired him, but I still have not heard back.
Hey, that kind of becomes a crucial question here. You know, you've got somebody who comes in and wants to be a security guard, says they used to be a cop. Why aren't you a cop anymore? You banned from being a cop? I mean, like, those seem like great questions. We'd love to know from the company whether they asked those.
He said he had brought this up in his resume. He told them where he had worked as a police officer before, but we just wanted to know from this company, did you ever reach out to these previous police departments to figure out why he's no longer in law enforcement anymore? But we're still trying to find out that answer.
Yeah, we know these departments are strapped, but
And so are security
these seem
guard
like vital
companies, too.
questions.
Yeah.
Yeah, hopefully we can get those answered soon.
Okay.
Thank
Kelly,
you, Kelly.
thank you.
Thank you.